This first topic I want to cover is fear. Do you have fear? Are you struggling with fear? And is fear gripping you and keeping you stuck in a rut? Well, I got news for you. There's a little verse that I love that says, fear is not real. Fear is learned. It's a condition that we learn. You're not born with fear. And how do I know that? There's a verse that says, for I have not given you the spirit of fear, but of a sound mind. So what's really going on is your mind is not sound. Your mind is not confident. You're lacking the confidence because you're lacking the experience and you're lacking the ability to take action because of fear has got you gripped because of why? The condition of your mind. What created that condition of your mind? Well, I'm going to tell you what created that condition of your mind. It's the experiences you went through, and most likely the experience you went through in your formative years. These are important things to understand, and that breakthrough, that action is on the other side of understanding these things and knowing these things and taking action in spite of it. You're like, well, I can't. I'm stuck in fear. Then borrow some courage. Borrow some courage from me. Borrow some courage from someone you look up to. Borrow some courage and understanding of a story that will help you to take action to get results. Because again, if you stay stuck in your rut and lack of action, there is no way for you to get results. There's no fruit that will ever come from that if you don't take action. And courage comes and can come from hearing somebody's story that didn't have your fear, that didn't have your childhood, that created the trauma or the experience that kept you stuck, that created the fear in your mind, that took away what God created in you, which was a sound mind. So, what's your story? What are you stuck in? Are you ready to take action? Can you really change the story? Well, I believe in you, and I know you can. But it's time for you to recognize that the reason why you're stuck is because of the story. So we can change that story. And there are ways that you can. There are ways that you can get hope and gain understanding. Has there ever been anything you've been able to accomplish? And when you first started it, potentially, let's go there. Okay, let's go here. In the sense of, did you ever have stress or feeling of overwhelm? Chances are it's because you're not familiar with that thing. Or chances are it's because you've got so many things going on and then now you want to add a new thing to it. And it's like that new thing I'm not familiar with, but does it still stress you out? Let me ask you this. Does it still stress you out or make you overwhelmed to think about driving? If you're on this call, chances are you're probably driving or you've driven before, 10 and 2, right? Foot on the brake, put it in drive. And if you ever drove a standard, oh my gosh, with the clutch, now you got to pop the clutch at the right time and you got to put it in gear, first gear, second gear. You're stressing out, right? You're overwhelmed. How do I learn how to drive? How can I do all this? And I remember when I first drove, I was driving a standard, happened to be my girlfriend's car. And I remember she's like, we need to go up on this hill. And the hill at the top of the hill was a stop sign. And I'm like, And there's a car behind me. She's like, you got to do it. You got to do it. If you roll back, you hit the car behind you. I'm like, oh my gosh. I was truly stressed and overwhelmed over driving. Now it's like, are you kidding me? No stress, no overwhelm. Pop the clutch. Don't even roll at all, right? Nice and easy off the clutch as you press the gas simultaneously. Just move forward. It's easy, right? Now, it's easy to put in drive and drive to work, and you've driven to work maybe 100 times or 200 times, and you don't even remember what stoplight you went through because you do the same routine, same drive every day, every day, every day. So guess what? It doesn't stress you out to drive anymore. You don't even think about putting it in drive anymore. You don't even think about 10 and 2, you're thinking about what you got to do at work and all this stuff, and you're just driving on autopilot. That's scary. No, it's not scary. It's not stressful anymore, is it? No. You know why? It's called neural passageways. It's a subconscious activity. It's part of your lifestyle now. You know how to drive without thinking about it. It no longer takes cognitive thoughts or awareness. You now can do it on autopilot. Sounds scary, right? But it's not. It's natural and it's normal. And so if you're facing something new and you're like stressed out and afraid and feeling like, oh my gosh, this is overwhelming, it's because you've not done it before, most likely. And the more you do it, 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 it'll become a subconscious activity. And if it's truly something you're trying to change in your life, I'll challenge you. Come see me. Come talk to me after you've done it 144 times. Let's just see what happens. Right? That's about 5 to 6 months if you're doing it every weekday. Right? Think about it. You got to put in so many hours to drive with someone next to you, right? You got to drive with someone in the vehicle with you so they can coach you and mentor you through it. It's like that, and you're going to get the best results. They have a different story. You're afraid to drive. Guess what? They're a driving instructor, or there's somebody that's had their license for many years, over 21, I think it is, or something like that. And they actually are not afraid when they're in the car. They're not afraid to drive. They're not nervous. They're not overwhelmed. And they can help you through it. That's the power of mentorship as well. So if you're facing something new that you're overwhelmed by, you're stressed about it, find somebody who's done it already and get them to tell you their story on how they did it. Are you following me? Hear me. I get it. I know you're overwhelmed. I know this is so much for you to comprehend and that you're like, I just can't do it. You're fearful, right? It's the mind. Once you hear somebody else's story, and here's an example, Roger Bannister, he was told that the 3 minute mile, is that right? Correct me if I'm wrong, Ken, is not possible. And this man broke that record. And they said it wasn't possible because if you ran that fast and that hard for that long, your heart would explode. Like they had all these theories. And so he did it. He was the first man to ever do it. I know his name, Roger Bannister, but what I can't remember if that, I think it is a 3 minute mile. And he did it. And now it's the standard. Thousands and thousands of people have done it. 4 minute mile. Thank you, Ken. 4 minute mile. I knew Ken would know because this guy's a runner. So Ken, thank you. The 4 minute mile, they said it wasn't possible. And Roger Bannister did it. It's always impossible until it's not. How about that? But now, this is way back when. I don't even know what year it was. But he did it and he broke the record and made it known that it's possible, that there is possible to do a 4 minute mile. And now it's the standard for running. Like that's what you go for, the 4 minute mile. And thousands of people do it. And so again, it used to be impossible. It used to stress people out trying to attempt to do it. It used to make people used to think it's not possible, but it's again, it's the fear of the mind and the understanding of it. Are you following me? You've got what it takes, but you need to hear a story like Roger Bannister to know it's possible. You need to hear the story of when people were overwhelmed and their bills were piling up. What did they do? They got creative. Their story of how they got through that darkness, how they got through that problem, and how was their victory. And this leads me to the next thing. How can we take fear? How can you take fear and make it your fuel? Huh? Listen up. I'm going to tell you something about fear. It does not have to control you. It's a mindset. We just determined that. But here's the next thing. Fear can actually fuel you, and you can actually embrace fear to take you to the whole next level. Because what I've realized in my life is when I have a reward and I have a fear, that's where my best results come from. A reward of what happens when I get up early in the morning, I go after my results, my dreams and goals, and I get it. But then I might be exhausted. And what if I don't reach those goals and I die with regret? Do you follow me? You got fear of regret and fueling that, like, well, that'd be miserable to be on my dying bed and I could have saved lives and transformed lives, and I just sat my lazy butt sleeping because I was tired because daylight savings switched over and I can't handle it. Yes, you can. You got what it takes. But sometimes you need to feed that fuel of fear, of regret, and you need to feed the fuel of reward. That's what's gotten me my best results. And believe me, it's fearful in the beginning because you're not used to it. I've never woken up that early in the morning. constantly, day after day after day. How can I do it now? I do it. If I can do it, you can do it. I'm not a special snowflake that just, you know, I am human just like you. I like to sleep in, but I've made a choice, made a decision, and I made it into a must. And sometimes we got to create that story of fear and that story of reward. What do you want? That's the first question. What do you want? What's your target? And then what are the fears that are preventing you from moving forward? Use it to fuel you. Add to it. Make it a worse story. Make it horrible if you don't do it. Make it worse than what it is for you if you're staying lazy or you're lacking sleep or you have to go without sleep to do it. What would be worse than that? Maybe it's a suffering of a loved one. Maybe it's a suffering of your wife or your children because you were too lazy and stayed in bed. You follow me? That fear can get your butt out of bed. And then what about the reward of, wow, the deeper connection or the money that I might be able to make to get quality time with my son and my daughter or my wife and go on those trips we've been talking about? Do you see me? Do you follow me? Fear and reward. It works. If you sandwich your goals with those things, I can almost guarantee you're going to get better results. That's what's worked for me. Try it out and let me know. I'd love to hear about it. Seriously. Now, another thing. Let's talk about the power and the importance of darkness. Now, some of y'all, you might be thinking, darkness. Isn't darkness like sin? Isn't darkness bad and evil? Like, and somebody dies or somebody gets an illness and that's darkness, or maybe it's somebody's problem, like or somebody, we can this reminds me, this darkness and this sin, even let's just go there, let's just call it sin what it is. It reminds me of a story of King David. He didn't go to battle, and there he was on that rooftop, and there he was, enjoying himself on his kingdom, and his men or soldiers are all fighting. What's interesting is David was known as a warrior. David normally would be fighting, but this time he stayed at home, and he deserves it. He's fought a lot of battles, and he's, when you're not active, by the way, you're not taking action and going after things, going after goals and fighting the battle, the good fight, you might get a little distracted and you might get off kilter that might lead to sin. When you got time on your hands, it gives you time to fall. So there's King David on the rooftop looking around. And he sees this beautiful woman showering on her rooftop, because in those times, that's what they would do. She's bathing on her rooftop, getting cleaned up, and the king could see her, and her name was Bathsheba. Now, she must have been a pretty fine-looking woman. And by the way, just to give you background, if you didn't know this, King David, he has not only one or two wives, he has lots of wives. I can't remember how many, hundreds. And not only that, he had what's called concubines, which are also women that you sleep with, kind of like prostitutes, but not the same. They're only designated to the king. He ain't going to have you sleeping with his women, right? So he had wives and concubines. Go look it up. But King David had this, all right? So what's very interesting is he saw Bathsheba, and man, he's like, she is gorgeous. I would like to have her. And by the way, he sent for her. And by the way, she didn't fight it. Do you know the privilege it is to be the king's wife? Like, it is a privilege. She came running. Yes, I want to be your wife, which basically means to sleep with him. That is royalty. She becomes royalty. Her inheritance, right? It's privilege. However, here's the challenge. It was adultery. Why was it adultery? Because Bathsheba was married. And the definition of adultery is to sleep with another person's spouse. Okay? Spouse, you have to be married. Well, she was married. Now, this sin, it's crazy, right? To sleep with another man's wife. However, what's interesting is that I want to clarify something, because here's the darkness, here's the sin. We think often that the sin was that David slept with a woman. No, the sin is David slept with another man's wife. Very, very important detail. Okay. Why? Because later on, God actually said to King David, why did you do that? You could have any woman you wanted as long as she wasn't married. If you needed another wife, I'd given you a wife. If you needed another concubine, you could have had a concubine. As soon as you knew and understood that that was another man's wife, she's off limits. That makes it a sin. That makes it betrayal of her covenant. Very important to understand that. Now, let's go here though, because what ends up happening is King David's going to cover up this sin and tell the story to you, like it or not. King David sends for this man. He's out on the battlefield, being loyal to King David, fighting the battle for him. He comes back. He sends for this man. The man comes back, and he thinks, well, this is what I'll do. Because, by the way, Bathsheba now gets pregnant. So I'm sure there's some time that goes on. She's not only sleeping with King David now, she's pregnant. He's like, oh my gosh, it's going to be revealed that I committed adultery and sin. He's like, let's cover it up. Let's bring her husband home. So I'm sure there must be some weeks that take place here, right? And so he sends for the husband. He comes home and he's like, this will do it. He'll go to his wife, he'll sleep with her. Not this man. This is a loyal and committed man to King David. The king sent for him. So he comes to King David's home, and he sleeps on his doorstep, waiting to serve the king however you want him to. I cannot go home to my wife. I am in battle, and I am in servitude and gratitude to my king. It's honor. And David didn't expect that. So David's like, oh, crud. Why didn't you go sleep with your wife? I thought I could cover this up. I'm like, gosh, now you've made a bigger deal out of it. You're loyal to the king. You're sleeping on my front porch and you refuse to go sleep with your wife. What in the world? I've never heard of this kind of honor. David's like, okay, I'll fix this. I'm going to send him to the front line. I'm going to send him to the front of the battle, and inevitably, because that's where most people get killed, I'll send him there and then we'll see what happens. He sends him to the front line, and the man dies in battle, right? Was it David's fault? Oh, he justified it. We justify things in our lives, don't we? Well, it wasn't me. I just sent him there, and it was a circumstance. God could have protected him. God could have done this or that, and then it would have been on me. Well, God, look, we all make excuses. We all use scapegoats. Here's the bottom line. He ends up dying. And then now this woman's free. She's no longer married, right? So now she can marry King David. Okay. Well, it was a sin. You reap what you sow. And guess what? That child ended up dying. Okay. The child that Bathsheba and David had, that original child, passed away. And David rent his clothes. He grieved. He asked God forgiveness. Please take my life instead of his. And he was miserable, miserable, miserable. Okay. Because he realized it was a result of his sin and again, all the circumstances. But here's where I want to get to, because that was sin, how they came together. But I also want to ask you something. God used the darkness to bring about one of the greatest kings who ever lived, King Solomon. King Solomon was Bathsheba's child. Now, how do you comprehend that? I want you to stop and pause and think about that for a minute, what that really looks like and what that means. How's that possible? This was a sin. So how was that? King Solomon was always meant to come to be. What if it wasn't Bathsheba? Who would it have been? Would it have been Solomon? Like, you can ask all the questions. But the point I'm trying to make to you was this sin, actually good came from it. That goes with God's promise, is that God will work all things together for good to those who love him and trust him and seek him. And David had repented, and now legitimately he married Bathsheba. Their marriage was real and holy and consummated, and they had King Solomon, who became one of the wisest, wealthiest kings to ever live. So I wanted to bring that up because, again, the darkness, we put it in a category that darkness is darkness, sin is sin, and that if we walk this walk with God, this darkness won't affect our lives. I'm here to tell you, without the darkness, you will not grow. Without the darkness, and I'm gonna finish with this. My time just went off. My timer went off, but I want to finish with this. It has to do with my word from Papa God last Friday. It has to do with, and I revisited it again today because it was such a powerful word. I want you to look it up, okay? It has to do with Matthew 24:13. Now, when I did a deep dive on this, what it basically said is that if you will stand firm and persevere, steadfast, endure till the end, complete, be a finisher, you will get a reward. You will be made whole. You will grow. You will learn. You will become stronger. What does that say? That means we must have something bad or terrible that we're enduring. Otherwise, we wouldn't need to endure. If it was nothing hard, if it was nothing bad, why would we have to persevere? Why would we have to be steadfast? Why would we have to stay the course? Why would we have to remain and stay firm? Because it's hard. And the more you do it, the easier it will get, the stronger you will become. Now that 20-pound weight of resistance isn't hurting your arm anymore. It's easy because you've done it enough, because you stayed till the end. You persevered. And God's promises is that you will be made whole. You will grow. You will become better. You will become a better leader. You will become a stronger father, husband, man. I don't know your circumstance and what you're going through right now, but the promise from God is still the same. If you will endure to the end. That's him saying and knowing that you must go through hard things. You must go through darkness and pain if you're going to grow. If there's no friction or resistance or opposition, there's no growth. It's life. It's not easy, but I promise you it's worth it. I'm living proof of it. I've been on many journeys, and I'm grateful to be alive and healthy and stronger than ever. God bless you guys. We'll see you next week. Thanks for being here and being a part of this men's call. Let's invite some people. Let's grow this community, and let's see transformation take place in our lives and in the lives around us, okay? I love you. God bless you. Have a good night.
Bless you.
Bless you guys.
Thank you, Carlos.
You're
Yep.
welcome. Thank you guys. See you later.
Thank you, Carlos.
You're
Yep.
welcome.
Yeah.
Go after it, guys. Let's go. Woo! Warrior up, man. Woo! Yeah.